Hey everyone, welcome to our very first episode. I'm your host, Derek Ramdeen Singh, and you're listening to the Calypso and Real Estate Podcast, where we chat about real estate, business, leadership, and everything in between. Having worked in the real estate industry for the past 3 years in Edmonton, I was very fortunate to meet some incredible people and have some great conversations as well. And that's the inspiration behind this podcast. So today I will be speaking with Lina Nguyen, the marketing manager at Rohit Communities. Lina is a University of Alberta alumni. She's worked in Rohit for over 5 years in various roles, from being a sales analyst to an assistant sales manager, production manager, and now rocking it as the marketing manager. In this episode, she shares her insights on how real estate marketing has evolved in the wake of COVID-19, as well as we talk about being open to new experiences, the importance of explaining why, and learning from your competitors in the real estate industry. I was really inspired by this conversation with her, and I think you will find it to be quite valuable. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, well, let's jump in. So tell me a little bit about what it's been to transition into a marketing role when, if I'm correct, you started off in mathematics and economics in university.
Oh my goodness. How much time do you have? Um, it's been a long time. I mean, I've had about 5 roles in 5 years is the statistic that I like to share. And it's been fun. I started as, a little bright-eyed little girl from university, and I just graduated and was looking for a place to get my start. And I landed here at Rohit. And got to start as a sales analyst, actually. So got to utilize like a little bit of the math, a little bit of the economics, and put it all together and start at Rohit. And through that, I was able to get a lot of experience working not just within our own team, but within a lot of external teams as well, and other teams around the organization. And in doing that, I got to learn so much, and it's been quite the ride between going from sales to marketing to production, and then and all everything in between, and getting to come back to marketing. So it's been a really fun ride, and not a lot of people can say that they've done it. So I'm very, very grateful.
No, 100%. And I think that's just a wealth of experience right there, especially in 5 years. Like, you're right. Not a lot of people can truly say that they've done that in 5 years or even 10 years. So, I mean, kudos to you. That's great. So with marketing right now, I think it might be fair to say that during this COVID time period, things have changed quite a bit, right?
No kidding.
Just like hit it on the nose, right? What have been some of your observations that you've noticed? I know I've observed some few things, but I'd love to hear from, your mind as to what you've seen.
Yeah, for sure. I'm happy to share my thoughts, but I want to hear yours too.
Yeah.
I think COVID and this entire pandemic has just really accelerated a lot of different buying behaviors. So even before this, people were used to buying things online. They were used to going on Amazon and going to Old Navy online, or going to all these different websites and getting their donuts and baked goods and all that stuff too. But you were also still kind of used to being able to pick it up instead of delivery, or going to go see it in person, and just picking yourself off the couch and being like, let's go look at some show homes today. But with COVID, a lot of those things really changed. So people had to learn to do virtual tours. People had to do a lot more of their meetings and conversations over Zoom. And you and I are on Zoom right now. And honestly, today at work, we had like the most quintessential like online meeting. So
Yeah.
Teams and like Microsoft decided to have a hard time today.
Oh.
And it seems like everybody in the world who would typically be on Teams decided to go over to Zoom. So we ended up having a meeting where some of us were in the office, some of us were at home, some of us were driving, some of us were in different cities, and we're all trying to like congregate on this Zoom meeting. So like one person would be driving, and then like anytime they hit a bump or like a pothole or something, like you could just hear them in a wind tunnel. Or like
Oh,
these other people who were at home, they would like their voice would kind of like go in and out, and then people at the office were having a hard time to log in or log out. It was like the most like, can you hear me?
yeah,
You're on
yeah.
mute. Your microphone sucks kind of meeting.
I feel
And
you.
yeah,
I feel you.
yeah, worst. I'm
Yeah.
sure you've experienced it too.
Oh, most definitely. I actually had a conversation with the neighbor's dog, and I'm like, "Hey, I have a Zoom meeting planned for tonight. I need you to keep your barking after 7."
Was that the dog or was that the neighbor?
That was the dog. I don't talk to the neighbor. I'm just kidding. But yeah, no, it's changed so much. I mean, thinking back to my time in real estate sales, I mean, back in 2017, very few people were using social media for real estate, and if they were, it wasn't to the level it is now. Like right now, we're seeing, to be relevant, you need to have your social media profile, whether it's Facebook or Instagram, or even now we're seeing TikTok, right? So yeah, it's been incredible to see it change. I think also from home buyer standpoint, we're seeing people do a lot of their home buying research online, website. 3 years ago, a quick possession home meant within 3 months. Now that timeline is probably a little bit more. I'm seeing in the industry, right? Because we're
Mhm.
seeing that increased demand, as well as homes are going fast, and the competitive interest rates. It's such a divergent path from where we were even a year ago. What have your thoughts been of like how the market has changed in that time?
Well, yeah, the market has changed, and to add a little bit more on like the consumer behavior as well. Um, like a lot of us really quickly, and here at Rohit, we were able to do it within a matter of a couple or a few weeks. We brought on online chat because you couldn't really talk face to face with people anymore. And you didn't really want to invite hordes of people out to your show home, which you really wanted to before.
Hmm.
Now, before the message was always, oh, come visit our show home. And you'd love it if you had like 10 groups in at one time, because that was just like the cat's meow if you
Hmm.
had 10 groups in your show home at a time. But now you got to like limit down to one group. And even if within that group, it has to be people from the same household. And to answer your question in terms of how the market has kind of shifted too. I think for a lot of people, they kind of got cooped up at home and they realized what was and what wasn't really working for their space.
Totally.
And that's what really drove a lot of those sales and a lot of those changes that,
Hmm.
that people were doing in their life. Because at the end of the day, people buy a new house when something in their life changes. They had a baby, they wanted to move out with their partner.
Hmm.
Maybe unfortunately their relationship broke down. There's so many different reasons why people choose to buy a new house or move or anything like that. And I mean, what other big change have we had than COVID?
Certainly,
So
certainly.
so it's showed a lot of people what works and what doesn't really work, and kind of what things people may desire more so in their next home. And because they weren't having the vacations and stuff to spend their money on, I think a lot of people chose to buy a house.
Yeah, no, definitely. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, when you're saving money, you're not buying that Starbucks coffee Monday through Friday, $5 a pop, and that eventually turns out to be a couple thousand a year, right? Then now that's going into your savings. When you think about parking downtown, right? So saving that, saving, the high end restaurant lunches, the
Gas
after.
money.
Oh, 100%. So yeah, it's been very great for a lot of people. I know for some people it's been difficult, and I never want to minimize that. But yeah, there's such a multifaceted approach that we're seeing. Maybe approach isn't the right word, but we're seeing a lot of different perspectives
Mhm.
on this situation for sure. While we're speaking about perspectives, I actually wanted to get your perspective as a fairly young leader. What advice would you give to our future leaders and people looking to take on more responsibility? Maybe they're just graduating from university, or maybe they're like me who just started out in a field like a couple years ago, and they're wanting to take that next step.
Oh, I can only give one piece of feedback. Um, the one piece of feedback or advice, I don't know if I'm in a spot to give advice, but if I were in your shoes or if I was in their shoes, the one thing I would say is to take every opportunity as an opportunity. Um, you honestly never know what will happen. And no matter what you're given, let's say you were given the job to, I don't know, close all the laptop screens in an office at the end of the day.
Right.
It's a job never heard of, but let's say that was your job. If your
Right.
job was to close all the laptop screens in an office at the end of each day, do the best that you can. Be on time, close every single laptop, maybe even wipe them down, maybe give their desk a little bit of organization, and do a really stunning job, because no matter what job you're given, people will notice if you really go above and beyond and you really excel, because they'll say, hey, wow, like that Lina girl, she did a really great job at closing all those laptops at the end of the day. And she even like put some stuff in the garbage. She even dusted off my laptop. Like it looks super duper clean. It's never scratched, it's plugged in, and she always really makes sure that she goes above and beyond. And you know what? At the end of it, someone may say, hey, I need somebody else actually to do another job. And since Lina has done such a good job at doing this, maybe we can have her do that too.
Mhm.
So even though it seems like the most nothing opportunity, it's something. And people will notice when you do a great job. And then all of a sudden you'll start gaining more experience, more responsibilities. You'll create relationships. And not only will you create relationships, you'll create great relationships where people know that you have a reputation of doing a really great job. And from that, you never know what opportunity may knock on your door. And it could be something really awesome. So yeah, I would say no matter what opportunity you're given, do your very best at it, because you don't know what opportunity you'll be given next.
I think that's great advice because it's so true. It rings true for me. Like my pathway to starting in real estate, I think it starts in university for me, I would say. I just happened to take a real estate course, didn't really think much of it. I liked it. I had always been kind of intrigued by real estate, but never said, put a stamp on it and said, this is what my career is going to be. I was actually in the finance and marketing fields.
Were
Uh,
you?
I was. So I never really realized that. And it wasn't towards actually the last semester of my degree that I kind of was like, hey, you know what? It might be kind of neat to take some more of these real estate courses. There was something, a kind of a new program called a certificate in real estate. And I was like, you know what? Why not? Why not do this? It can't hurt. Right. And through that, I got to meet a lot of great people in the industry. Um, Even I met Rohit Gupta at one of the real estate forums prior to working for the team. So, that was just a really incredible experience. And I don't think I would have got there if not being open to what was around me and allowing myself to be exposed to a lot of different things. And kind of on that point, one thing that I really admired working with you um, when you were my assistant sales manager was that whatever I would come to you with, as easy as it would be to say absolutely not, maybe I would get a no, but I'd also get okay, let's sit down, let's kind of break it down. What is this? How can we still maybe get the solution, and what are some different ways we can go about it? And for me, I've always wondered, where does that patience, where does that ingenuity, where does that come from?
I think it boils down to just like the golden rule. Like you want to be treated that way, so you treat others that way too. And I think it is just like common decency. People prefer to be kind and prefer to be to have a listening ear than not. So I honestly think that's where it came from, and it's very kind of you to mention that, Derek. Um, but yeah,
It's all
I
true.
think
It's all true.
oh, thank you. I think that's honestly where it came from. If I was given a no, or not now, or maybe later, or maybe that's not the best idea, I would prefer for somebody to tell me why, rather than just give me like a hard no and saying like absolutely not, that's not happening, not in our business practice, it doesn't follow our rules, can't do it. I'd much prefer to get a why. That way,
Mhm.
next time a customer, let's say, would ask you that question of, hey, Derek, can we do this? You would have a better answer. And maybe you would be able to explain them why we can or can't do something. And honestly, it helps me that you didn't have to come back again and ask me the same question. And you're able to better explain, get more experience yourself. And you feel a lot more confident because you've just learned something that you didn't have before. So I think that's where it came from. And I'm always curious. I always ask why. I think sometimes I might ask why too much. But I like asking why because I want to know. And sometimes it's not because I want to do anything with it, but it just bugs me that I don't know. So I just ask why and ask sometimes maybe challenging questions, but it's honestly at the end of the day just because I want to know or want to understand better than I currently do. So I extend the same courtesy to you.
I appreciate that. That's something that I took with me too in how I dealt with clients. Just like you said, like rather than saying no, we can't do this. No, you know what? We are not able to do this because of X, Y, Z. And providing that education also allowed me to learn a lot about, construction and process and legislation, different things like that. And I think when you're able to educate someone and give them a nugget, that's when you create a more meaningful experience. And I think even if I'm telling a client I cannot do this, but I'm saying why, they're still getting a nugget. So it takes away that negative feeling a little bit of like, no, I just won't do it. It's like, no, we can't do it because of this. It's in your interest not to do this because of that. Because when you're buying a house or you're doing anything, maybe it's business wise or learning, when it's collaborative, you have a vested interest. And when someone sees that they're interested, that I'm interested in what they're doing and they're interested in what I'm doing, I think that creates a great opportunity for a great experience.
And you're also putting the time in, right? Like it's like a no is like a 2-second thing. But when you're able to put the time in and investigate, like that makes you a better salesperson. That helps bolster your relationship with that client. And that makes them trust you a little bit more because they know that like you're not bullshitting them.
Totally.
Because you actually have a legitimate reason why, and it helps to create that trust for sure. It's like when you're young and your parents say no, you can't do that, and you say why, and they're like because I said so. That's not very helpful. But
yeah, especially when you do it anyways.
But if you have it, but if your parents give you like a why, you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense, and then you're able to better make a decision. Hopefully.
I never made the good decision. I still did it anyways. I was recently watching the Second Floor podcast, and they brought up a really interesting concept in terms of, cultivating that leadership mentality, the championship mentality. And they put it in the context of the relationships you have around you, the people you have around you, right? And so what they were saying was that, it's important to have someone who's where you want to be, have someone who's maybe on the same level as you, and also have someone who wants to be where you are currently, because it gives you the opportunity to learn from someone where you want to be, to also learn from that person that's on the same level as you, and to be a teacher to the person who is maybe where you were in the past, or to help bring them up to where you are. And I was just kind of curious with your different achievements in leadership, which of that rings true for you, or does it at all?
First of all, you're hyping me up way too much. Second of all, it's a great podcast. I'm glad that you bring it up. It's a couple of good guys and they have really great conversations, so that's awesome. But my thoughts on that, no, I think that's great. I think it shows a lot of self-awareness in terms of where you currently are. It shows a lot of forward thinking to kind of like have that relationship with somebody who is where you want to be. But it also shows that you kind of want to give back to somebody else who is an up and comer. And I think that's great because if you don't have that person who is where you want to be, that makes you pretty stagnant, because that means you're potentially not, and I mean, everybody's different, but you're potentially not having that forward sight to like see, okay, this is where I am today, but that's where like I could be, and maybe that's not exactly where I want to be, or maybe that's not exactly where I'm going to end up, but at least that's a possible direction for me to go. And it's good to kind of have that like forward thinkingness of wanting to be able to do something more and something better and having that ambition. I also think it's great to have somebody who's currently where you're at,
Mm-hmm.
give or take, because it gives you the ability to have a peer who you can bounce ideas off of and someone who you can, have as a buddy. A buddy is always good. Don't be a lone wolf.
Yeah.
It's boring. Um, and it's always nice to have somebody who is an up and comer. I love having people that I can talk to about, what's something that they can do. Maybe if
Mm-hmm.
they're first trying to get into the real estate world or the marketing world or anything at all. Um, like it makes me feel good to be able to like share that knowledge for somebody, because I would have loved to have somebody who
Mm-hmm.
told me, Lina, if you do A, B, and C, you'll be able to get to E. Like
Mm-hmm.
no one told me that. I did have people who believed in me, which is
Mm-hmm.
always really nice. But it's nice to be able to, share some knowledge of a possibility. Um, and I can be that person, perhaps, that is their upstream the same way that someone else is my upstream.
No, totally. And I think that's so true. The other aspect that, I kind of heard them mention, and, I was thinking about it for myself was, which of these relationships is the hardest to cultivate? And in the podcast, they mentioned it was the person that's on the same level. And for myself, I relate to that too, because especially in the context of residential real estate, different sales teams, salespeople, you're all trying to get a sale. And a lot of times that can sometimes come into conflict, or not conflict, but let's say competition, right? And so sometimes when you're viewing someone so strongly as competition, it's hard to kind of take away the ego, take away the pride, and say, hey, we're doing the same thing. We're still part of a team, right? And I found that was a little bit difficult for me early on in my journey. But I was happy that towards the end of the journey, I was, able to focus on mentoring my sales associate, my buddy Viv, as well as building relationships with people that were at the level that I am, and also people that have done it for much longer than I have. And I think it's so true. Having all those people and the different perspectives really does allow you to see things from a multiple viewpoints and to grow in
Can I
general.
ask can I ask how you cultivated those relationships? Like I would agree. It's
Hmm.
not always the easiest to kind of cultivate that relationship with someone who's on the same level with you, because there's always that aspect of competition, but there's also the piece where you want to be able to lift each other up too. But you're right, like within the real estate commission sales world, it can get a little ugly out there sometimes,
Hmm.
as we all know. So how did you cultivate those relationships? How did you be able to, like put some of that to the side of that addition to your next paycheck, to be able to see the longer term goal that it's better to have these relationships in place so that you could actually, be buddies and be friends and be able to bounce ideas off of each other, perhaps?
Yeah, no, definitely. That's a great question. I would say part of it starts with um, understanding that there's a lot of fish in the sea. If someone
Mm,
else sells a house that you want to sell, there's other houses. And, I think being able to appreciate and respect what someone's able to do rather than saying, oh, they were just able to do it this way or that way. And say, like, no, like you're great at what you do. And having that self awareness as well as the awareness of what they're able to do and acknowledgement, I would say. Um, then you're more able to be like, hey, like actually, how did you do that? And if you can be open with them, they're more likely to be open with you. That's not always the case, but I think it starts with being open, right?
I think that's super mature and very difficult,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes to be able to put that to the side. I know I haven't always been really good at that, and I hope that I am better at that today than I was yesterday or the day before that, or kind of just hoping that every day is a little bit of an improvement. But yeah, for sure, you have to be able to sometimes take that longer view of, okay, like maybe that person gets the accolades today, but maybe we can work together and we
Mm-hmm.
can each achieve our own individual accolades in the future.
Exactly. Like for me, I'm always in full acknowledgement. I'm not at, excuse me, I'm not perfect. I'm not, I don't have all the answers. And every different person that you can interact with, you can gain something from that. You can learn
Mhm,
something from that. And if you have that mindset, it becomes a little bit easier. Like, I can learn something from this person. They can learn something from me. It's
mhm,
mutually beneficial.
mhm.
Um, and so just going forward with that, I think helps. In the past year, I think we've all seen um, a lot of discussions about diversity and diversity in different roles and the workplace. And one thing that I felt very fortunate about is that, the experiences that I have had, I've been so fortunate to have, diversity in leaders and management. And you're a great example of that. So I've always wanted to ask you, like, why do you think diversity is important in management and upper level management and decision makers in general?
Oh, so many reasons. Um, One is for sure like the representation aspect of it is always really important. I think being able to see that you have female or male or minority or young or old or whatever it is type of background up there, it gives other people the motivation or at least like the thought of, oh, maybe that's possible for me too, or not even maybe that is possible for me too. Um, and it kind of gives people that like oomph and that excitement to go to work, that they're not just looking through the corporate pamphlet and seeing the same face over and over again. It really gives you that motivation to know that there is diversity at the top, and that company or whatever it is always values that diversity. So representation is for sure important. Um, and it just makes you feel good, and
Hmm.
it also helps you to know that there is diversity in thought, not just diversity in category of human. Um, because if you have the same type of person who is running something, and I think that I'm very lucky to be somewhere where we do have a lot of that diversity in management. It it helps everybody feel that piece of confidence, that
Hmm.
that there's a lot of different viewpoints being brought to the table, and that we have parents at the table, we have single people at the table, we have young people at the table, we have older people at the table, female, male, whatever it is, who are able to bring those different viewpoints and able to represent different types of different people who are at different stages of their life.
Hmm.
um, so I think that diversity is important for a couple of those different ways, both from a representation standpoint, but also from a standpoint of diversity of thought, and it kind of creates that engagement and that confidence throughout an organization.
I think it's been incredible to see how our local Edmonton businesses and the diversity in those businesses and how they've been able to adapt to COVID and regulations and still try to power forward. And so I was wondering, was there any local businesses that you have, previously either worked with or you've been a consumer of that you'd like to maybe give a shout out to?
Yeah, there's a couple actually. One was Donut Party. And as a YEG local, I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure a lot of us know Donut Party. And I really appreciated that when things turned on their head, they actually started to deliver.
Mm-hmm.
And that was so great because, like a girl got to have her donut party fix.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and being able to still, for them as a business to still be able to stay open, good for them, and be able to
Mm-hmm.
find a new way for themselves to operate. That's great. I love their donuts, so it's awesome. And like even places like hairstylists, they started to sell their product. Like that's awesome. They couldn't always still have their one-on-one appointments, but they created like my hair um, person. Shout out to I Do Hair. Um, she I think it's I Do Hair YEG is her handle. She started to create like different hair care packages that people could come and pick up, and like if your hair was looking janky, sorry, is that professional? If your hair is looking not so great,
If
um,
you had a quarantine haircut.
If you had a quarantine haircut,
It's all
and if
about
you
the
had some
spend.
perfect, and if you had some quarantine roots,
Hmm.
then you could pick up some product to help you out. And I think like that was great. And you saw all these enterprising seamstresses come out and create face masks and stuff like that. So
Hmm.
I think it was awesome. And a lot of people preferred to support local when they can, right?
Hmm.
So I think that's just an example of a few, but there was a lot of really awesome businesses out there um, who pivoted and found out ways to still operate. Even restaurants, like
Hmm.
not only did a lot of them start delivering, but they also started to become their own stores where they were selling off their extra flour and sugar and like flour and yeast. As we
Yeah.
know, at the beginning of the pandemic, everybody was making bread for some reason because bread was going to save your life.
Yeah.
Um, so a lot of these restaurants were selling off flour and yeast and baking soda and stuff like that too. But I mean, it's a way for them to keep going, and that ingenuity is always good.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, would want to shout out Philly Sticks. They're a fusion Filipino food restaurant, and one thing that I was incredibly impressed by is the level of customer service during the pandemic. A lot of times, especially in customer service, you rely on your face, you rely on your features to kind of smile, portray, inviting environment, and they just went above and beyond, just really creating an experience. Me, myself, and my girlfriend, we went. I believe it was around September, and they were super nice. It was nice to know everything was like socially distant as well. So within the lines of regulations, as well as just the way that they interacted with us, from explaining the menu to even doing something. I think I ordered something that was usually for lunch, and they were able to accommodate that. And just such a you can see the level of care, and I really appreciated that. And I think those guys, they do an amazing job. And I look forward to going back there again soon. Also, another company that I had the pleasure of discovering for the first time was Awake Coffee House, actually in the kind of the Windermere Basin. Yeah, it's a very unique concept. They have a coffee house as well as a pharmacy attached, and in between that space, you have some seating and stuff like that. And what I really appreciate about that is it's two sisters and their husbands working, that managed both operations. And not only that, they're also working with other local businesses to do sourcing. So, for instance, their chai comes from Remedy, and yeah, and they also there's another company in Leduc that they work with as well for some of their products, and they even made a special Awake blend with Drum Roaster, which I believe is based out of BC. So it's a nice feeling to know, like, when you go there, you're not only supporting them, but you're also supporting the other businesses that they're supporting. So, it gives you that nice community feel, not to get too soft here. But it's nice to see everyone prosper, especially in a time right now where we've seen a lot of people fall on difficult times. It's nice to be a part of a movement to help those around you.
Should we give them a little local high five?
Let's do a local high five.
Boom.
We got to work on the timing for that. Tell me a little bit about you, early Lina.
Oh, early Lena is my teachers could probably see the writing on the wall. Um, of
I love
early
it.
Lena to current Lena.
I love it.
I was a teacher's pet. Yeah, self-proclaimed. I was always one who put up my hand first. I
Hmm.
was that little. Am I allowed to swear?
It's, yeah, whatever you're comfortable with.
I was. Give me a moment. Well, I was that little shit who would finish their mad minute first, and then I'd slam my pencil down, so that people knew that I was done. I was that person, and I'm sorry, but I was that
Don't be sorry. That was your swag. That was your swag.
person. That was my way of cementing where I was in that point in time, was that pencil slam. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and I was always one who was helping the teacher like clean up the paintbrushes, um, always showing up on time, always lining up real nice. So yeah, I was always a teacher's pet, and I think um, it made me a high achiever, and it made me always want to do well. So yeah, I think little Lena
Mhm.
is uh is still there. she hasn't changed too much. She may have manifested herself in a slightly different way, and she may have a little bit more of rough edges, and she may be willing to do a few different things. But teacher's pet Lina is still there.
And do you think that the younger version of yourself would have seen yourself where you are today?
Good question. Maybe. I think so.
Yeah.
I don't think she'd be that surprised. I think she would have seen that, like, she wouldn't have seen me like at this exact point. But she would have known that I was doing something cool.
I like it.
Yeah.
With that
What
being,
go ahead.
what about myself?
Yeah.
I would say in school, I would say when I was younger, I was definitely, very academically inclined. I wouldn't quite go teacher's pet. But I think definitely towards the latter part of schooling, I was definitely less in the good books with the teachers, but still doing well academically. I was more of the, if I need to skip a class to do what I got to do, I will, but always ready to perform. And I think that mindset kind of shifted from wanting to seek approval from teachers to really like, what do I want? Am I happy with this? I'm gonna work hard and do well, but I'm gonna do it on my own terms. And I think that's something that for me, I think that's an important aspect of myself is I want to do things on my terms. I might not do things in the typical ABC fashion, but I will get to where I'm going. It might not be the way you might think, but I'm always working towards the next big thing. And with that being said, Lina, where do you see yourself in the next little bit? What can we expect to see from you? What's kind of on the horizons?
Oh, do you know Natasha Bedingfield?
I do. I'm not
The
going to
singer?
admit I definitely do. I'm not going to admit how much I do, but I do.
She has a song and she says, "The rest is still unwritten."
Mm-hmm.
And I think you didn't see that coming, did you?
I should have, but I didn't.
I think that's what it is. I don't know, honestly. I would love to start a business one day. That would be awesome. That'd be amazing. That would be really, really fun. It'd be a lot of hard work.
Mm-hmm.
But I would really like to. And I mean, when I started at this company 5.5 years ago, I didn't think that I would end up where I am, and I had no idea that I would have the journey that I have. But again, like, everything's an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So no matter what I do, I hope to do the best job that I can and put a lot of effort into it and open up new opportunities in the future. So yeah, I don't really know what's next for me, Derek. But rest still in it.
No, fair enough. I like that. I think it's also exciting to not have everything so detailed and planned. Like, this is what my next 2 years are going to look like. This is what my next 3 years. I think it's kind of fun to see which pathway you take, maybe having an overarching idea. And I think I like your point about, wanting to start your own business, because for me, especially during this pandemic, I've had a lot of time to reflect, and that's definitely something that has intrigued me. And I have a lot of different interests, and I'd like to see how those might manifest as business opportunities. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And I won't say the rest is still unwritten, because I have some things on the dome already, but I'm looking forward to sharing more of that with us as we move forward and progress. And I think this podcast is a great opportunity to have some great conversations, to learn more about other people's journey, and also for myself to get some better insight into how I can incorporate that into my future endeavors. So
Yeah, well, I really enjoyed our conversation today. It's very nice to see you. We haven't gotten to do this in a while.
I know we still got to do this in person. Hopefully, we'll see what happens with this vaccine rollout. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Again, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to sit down with me on the podcast today. And as usual, always great conversations. And I'm happy that we'll be able to share that with a wider audience this time.
You got it.
And that's a wrap. Thank you for tuning in to our very first episode of the Calypso and Real Estate Podcast. Big thank you to Lina for trusting myself and the audience with your story and insights. It's been such a pleasure to explore these topics with you, and I'm really looking forward to a part 2 in the near future. I also would be remiss if I didn't give a big shout out to my girlfriend, Dakshani, for her amazing video editing skills. This podcast would not be what it is without her attention to detail. And she's actually not even a video editor by trade. She's actually a portrait and branding photographer. So everyone, please check out her photography business. She's on Instagram at Dakshboo, and you can find her website at www.dakshboo.com. You'll find both her and Lina's handles in the description below. So please show some love to everyone and let us know what you thought on social media. We're really interested in hearing your feedback and, trying to make this podcast a little bit better and keeping up what we're doing well. So any of your thoughts are completely welcome. The Calypso and Real Estate Podcast will return for an episode 2. So stay tuned.